day 7, I'm going to be talking about something tangentially related to traditional Chinese medicine, and that is tradition. So, working with a traditional system, I have to reconcile the veneration of the past and the aspiration for the future and modern science versus ancient science and all of these other not contradictory but competitive things in my philosophy. And through that and other, philosophy texts and fiction books with similar topics, I've come to the conclusion that it is the duty of every person to examine their traditions. Whether that's in your medical practice, or in your religious practice, or your social life, whatever it is, to examine what you do because your parents did it, or because your teachers did it, or because your priest does it, and if that is really in alignment with what it is to be human and what it is to be you. And I'll give a couple examples. So the first one that is on my mind recently and kind of in the atmosphere as far as I can tell is the idea of gender norms and the concept of what it is to be a man or a woman, to be masculine or feminine, or to be genderqueer, or whatever in between kind of flow and non-specific genderedness. And I think it's very valuable to examine that because some parts of our genderedness are rooted in biology. And some parts are rooted in our culture. And some parts are rooted in, our microculture, our family, or our huge macroculture of like what it is to be on Earth. But to examine what that is in a really personal way of not what should a man be, but what should I be as a man seems like a more practical and workable way to wrap your head around these huge concepts of what is gender. Likewise, to bring it back to Chinese medicine, I'm going to give an example of one of the more ridiculous things that gets talked about in some ancient Chinese texts that have generally been thrown out of canon. So this is one that pretty much everyone agrees is not a valuable part of tradition. And I'm going to caveat this by saying so much of the traditional texts are evidently workable, right? You throw any sort of scientific test against them and they seem to show up functional. But something that some of the texts talk about, and they get classified as Chinese alchemical texts, recommend preparation and drinking of mercury and gold preparations. And as we know, mercury and gold are both heavy metals and very toxic to the body, and there were definitely emperors of China and their physicians who died trying to achieve immortality by drinking cinnabar or mercury and gold. So there are things in any traditional system that are not as valuable as other things in the traditional system, and that neither means that you can throw the whole thing out nor accept the whole thing. Neither's the wrong word to use there. But you fall off both sides of a bridge. You can't reject everything or accept everything just because it falls next to something that you do believe works. That's my little blurb on my opinions about tradition and how we should examine our traditions. Day 7. I'm almost through the first 10 days. I think I'm probably going to keep doing this because it's kind of fun to have little blurbs of philosophy. And there's a cat. All right. Subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you tomorrow.